Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We have Jannik versus Alex de Minaur for the semi-final of the 2025 ATP Finals. Very much looking forward to getting into this one. Should be an interesting one to break down. The head-to-head is, yes, very lopsided in favor of Jannik, and we'll break that down, of course, as well. We'll talk about their matches so far, tactically how it might play out, and then ultimately I'll give you guys my prediction. Before you do get into it though, remember that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Okay, so let's talk about the head-to-head. So it's 12-0 in favor of Jannik Sinner. 7 of those matches were played on indoor hard court, and Alex de Minaur has only won or taken one set of Jannik in those 7 indoor matches. And that was in 2020 in Sofia, and it was a tiebreaker. So it doesn't make great reading for Alex, I have to be honest. And look, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to see how he wins this, and we'll talk a little bit about why Jannik's style is so difficult for Alex to overcome. Before we do get into that though, I want to talk about who they've played so far and how have they looked. So Jannik has got through his group without any issues whatsoever. He hasn't dropped a single set. Against Felix Auger-Aliassime in the first match that he had, it looked like Felix might push him similarly to what he did in the Paris Masters, but it wasn't to be because Felix got injured towards the back end of that first set, if I'm not mistaken. And then Jannik took over. A pretty polished performance from Jannik, especially behind the first serve. 89% of first serve points won there. And it was a similar case against Zverev. 6-4, 6-3, straight set victory. 12 aces, though. That was a big positive out of that Zverev match. And 71% of first serves in and 83% of first serve points won. What was actually really impressive, and just to quickly go back on that Felix match, was he won 100% of his first serve points. I think it was 12 out of 12 points in that first set. Incredible. Absolutely incredible from Jannik. And his first strike tennis is really difficult for players to deal with because it's just so clinical. And he's being able to hit his spots really well, especially indoors. It's a big advantage for his specific serve, I think. And then he has so much confidence and trust knowing that the ball's going to come back the way that he thinks it's going to. There's no outdoor conditions, wind, sun, dodgy bounce because of clay, potentially, or grass. He knows it's going to come back with consistent bounce and speed, and he can anticipate it so much better than he would on those outdoor conditions. It just gives him a lot more peace of mind to really go for his shots, especially that +1 shot. So look, he's been looking good. And against Shelton, again, a very impressive performance against the American. 75% of first serves in, 81% of first serve points won, 11 aces. Out-acing Shelton almost 2-1. We know he's one of the best returners on tour, and he's one of those players who really systematically breaks you down nowadays. Doesn't go for the lines as much as he used to. He mainly hits very hard with a lot of depth through the middle, then opens up the court and then picks you off. And that's essentially what Jannik does so well. And he misses a lot less than he used to. He still hits the ball as hard, but he hits into bigger targets. His service also improved monumentally. For Alex de Minaur, it's been an interesting time because he really squeaked through this group. He lost to Carlos Alcaraz in straight sets. Then against Musetti, he lost in 3 sets. He was 5-3 up in that deciding set against Musetti, lost it 7-5. And then against Fritz, he had to win it to have a chance of going through. He did win impressively in straight sets, and it was his first win in a while against a top 10 opponent. So it was a great mental victory more than anything, because after the Musetti loss, he was extremely down on himself. He said it was one of the hardest days of his career, just because he felt that he was getting into so many good positions against top players, especially this year, and he just wasn't able to capitalize and get over the finishing line. He managed to do so against Fritz in very clinical fashion as well, it has to be said, in very impressive fashion. To do that 2 days later takes a lot of mental strength, and I have to give him his props for sure, because it's a really impressive feat, and clearly it just shows that tennis can really flip on its head in just a day or two, depending on performances. So, he squeaked through, by the way, because when there's 3 players that are on the same amount of wins, it then comes down to the percentage of games that have been won. Dimona had lost the same amount of games as Fritz. Musetti was out of the running because his win percentage was quite low. He'd lost too many games and not won enough. But even though he was joint on wins being joint on a win, Dimona won one more game than Fritz to boost his overall game win percentage to supersede Fritz and make it through to semi-finals. So he really has got through by the finest of margins, and fair play to him. So, why has Sinner been such an issue for Dimona? Well, Demon generally feeds off players making unforced errors. He is a counter puncher with a lot of speed from the back of a court, extremely good defensively, moves so well out of the corners, and asks a lot of questions with flat, deep hitting. Doesn't hold a lot of power from the back of the court. He's not going to hit a high percentage of winners. He's not necessarily going to force a huge amount of errors as well. He doesn't have that type of penetrating power through the court necessarily, but what he does have is consistency and the ability to frustrate an opponent. What also is quite impressive, and I think is probably a little bit underrated, is his net play. I think he's pretty good, and he is a very good returner as well, and that comes down to the fact that his serve is a little bit of a weakness, I think is fair to say. Doesn't have the biggest or most potent of weapons when it comes to his serve. And if we match him up against Jannik, there's a few issues that can be flagged, right? So number one is these types of players who like to counterpunch and essentially grind it out at times from the back of the court. On a fast indoor hard court, one, it's not the most ideal style to have, if I'm being honest. But two, against Sinner specifically, it's not necessarily a great matchup because he is able to, one, ensure that he has a very high shot tolerance and ensure that actually he is not falling into the trap of making a lot of errors and being frustrated by Dimona. He's extremely patient and cool when it comes to these types of exchanges. He will most likely, and has done in this rivalry, flip the rally into his favor, transition from defense to neutral to attack very quickly, to then make Dimona feel uncomfortable, force errors from the Australian, or even start then dragging Demon out. Because yes, he's got a lot of speed, but Sinner has added a lot of elements to his game recently as well, which means that it's going to be even more difficult, I think, for Dimona to disrupt Jannik. The drop shot is something that he is clearly looking to implement more and more, and he has been doing so at the ATP Finals. On top of that, he has also been coming to net a lot more, not necessarily at this tournament, but generally for the last year or so. To add to that, his returning is extremely good, so he's going to put a lot of pressure on the Demon service games, and has done in this rivalry, because, as I said, Demona's serve is not the biggest, and Jannik is not going to back up on serve or on return position. He's not going to back up from the baseline. If he needs to take the ball early from the baseline, or take the ball early. On return, he's extremely comfortable doing so, taking the ball on the rise. And that then means that Demon is rushed because Jannik hits the ball so clean. Jannik is so good at heading deep, penetrating returns through the middle and forcing the opponent to dig out returns and then just being extremely explosive behind that return +1. And he can be explosive with the forehand or backhand. And that's another point to then lead on to, which is the backhand to backhand exchange. That is a real issue for Minaur because his backhand is functional. It is not a top 10 backhand, and he is a top 10 player at the moment, but it's not a top 10 backhand by any stretch, in my opinion. I would say maybe top 20, yes, but not top 10 in my opinion. And I think Jannik just dominates that exchange so much, and then he's able to go line at will with the backhand in a lot of instances that it just really does hurt Demon. And I wonder whether he should slice that backhand a bit more. But Jannik is not necessarily disrupted by the slice. I mean, on grass, because it skids a bit more, it can be a bit more potent. And I think, Carlos, not necessarily in this year, but at points on maybe not him, but other players on grass when they slice the Jannik's backhand, I think it's been a decent tactic and a change up and variation to utilize at times. And I think Demon should tinker with that, because just going over the backhand consistently to Jannik is not going to do the job, in my opinion. And he's not going to have the ability to go effectively line first in that exchange as well versus Jannik. And if he doesn't go effectively line, which a lot of the times he won't if he tries to force the issue, Jannik then has been going very consistently with the forehand cross pretty hard into that corner in this tournament specifically. It was flagged by Tennis Insights as a potential weakness of forehand cross court, but it's almost like he knew the data, and his team probably does know the data, and he's been very consistent. Whereas he's been going hard into that corner with bigger targets. In the past, he'd almost tried to hit angles that maybe weren't quite on. And now I think he's been a bit more vanilla, I think, with the way that he's approached that. And he's realized that I've got enough pace and depth to deal with the forehand cross. And then when I want to go line, or if I want to go middle, or to get a backhand, or okay, if I get a slightly shorter ball, I've got a lot more time, then yes, I can find that angle, but I don't want to force the issue and make errors on that wing. So that's been very interesting to witness. And then on serve, he's causing a lot of issues because he's getting a lot of free points from aces, unreturnable serves, and then also coming forward, whether that's with the volley or the drop shot or with the serve +1 forehand or backhand, to then either get him on the front foot in the point or to win the point within 3-4 shots. Indoor hard courts is so suited to Jannik's game in the way that he plays. It's just very difficult to see any player, if I'm being honest, beating him. And the only player that I think can beat him, and hopefully do get that final, is Carlos Alcaraz. The courts are slightly slower than last year. They're still pretty quick though. And generally speaking, they're medium fast. And I would say that Sinner is just the moment. Even though Minaur is going to take a lot of confidence from that Fritz match, I just don't see him beating Jannik. That's my analysis of this. Let me know in the comment section below what you think and why. I'm going to go with Jannik in 2 sets, so in straight sets. I think there will be one set that is quite close. Probably the first set. And I think after that, I think Jannik will take over. For Minaur though, look, win or lose, it's been a very good tournament. He last year didn't get through his group, and I actually don't know if he even won a match last year actually in the round robin, if memory serves me correctly. So this is a real positive for him, and especially the win over Fritz. So I'm sure he'll look at that and realize, okay, yes, I can take a lot of mental strength from that. If he gets the win against Jannik, it's a huge moment in his career. And also a pretty big moment in tennis, to be honest, because the rest of this group of players, they have not been challenging Jannik and Carlos enough in the last 2 years. And if he were to beat him, it'd be a big statement. Thanks very much, guys. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you later.